This is my real story and I need to share it because keeping it inside feels like a curse of its own. My name is Jenna Rivers. I'm 24 years old and this happened to me in a way I never imagined, something so terrifying that even now writing about it my hands are shaking because it all began with family, with my cousin who I once trusted, who I once thought of as my sister, and the betrayal that followed turned into a nightmare that refuses to leave me. So please listen carefully because what happened to me could happen to anyone who trusts too easily. And before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share because stories like mine are written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries, and it's the only way these truths come out of the dark corners of people's lives. So here's how it all started. I grew up in a small town outside of Portland, Oregon, and my cousin Vanessa was always around because our mothers were sisters and we spent summers together, birthdays, Christmases. Everything, and from the outside it looked like we were inseparable, like we were best friends bonded by blood, but the truth is, there was always a shadow behind her smile, something envious and unsettling, as if she was always measuring herself against me, my clothes, my friends, my life, even my parents' attention. And as we got older, that darkness only grew stronger until one day it consumed her completely. But back then I didn't see it, or maybe I didn't want to, because when you grow up with someone, you convince yourself that blood means loyalty and loyalty means safety, and I wanted to believe I was safe, that she loved me, that she would never hurt me. But everything changed the summer after I turned 20 when my parents asked me to let Vanessa move in with us temporarily while she sorted out some family issues that no one really explained. And even though I was in college and had my own life, I agreed because she was family, because I thought it would be fun to reconnect. And for the first few weeks, it actually was. We laughed like old times, watched movies, and shared late-night snacks, but little things started to go wrong, like my favorite necklace disappearing, or my journal going missing, or text messages on my phone being read even though I knew I had locked it. And whenever I asked her about it, she would just shrug and act innocent, smiling that smile that never reached her eyes, the one that felt like it was hiding something. And then one night I woke up to the sound of her whispering in the dark, her voice low and trembling, and when I peeked through the crack of my door, I saw her kneeling on the floor with candles lit all around, scribbling something in a notebook that looked like it was written in a language I didn't understand. And when I whispered her name, she snapped her head toward me so fast that my heart almost stopped. In her eyes weren't normal, they were wide and shining, and the smile on her face was nothing human. And she laughed and said, "You weren't supposed to see this," before blowing out the candles, leaving me in the pitch black, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. But when I confronted her the next morning, she acted like I was crazy, like I had dreamed it, and maybe I could have believed that if it wasn't for what came after. Strange things began happening in the house, doors slamming by themselves, the sound of footsteps following me in the hallway even when I was alone, whispers in the walls at night, and the smell of something rotten that wouldn't go away no matter how much my mom cleaned. And I knew it was connected to Vanessa. I knew she had brought something dark with her, something that wanted me, but no one else believed me, not even my parents, who said I was just stressed with school. But the truth was, I wasn't stressed, I was scared, terrified, because I could feel her watching me, not just as a cousin, but as something more dangerous, something like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then the accident happened, the one that almost ended my life, and that's when I realized she wasn't just jealous of me, she wanted me gone, erased, destroyed, and the thing she had called upon in the shadows was helping her do it. But by then it was already too late, because once something evil sets its eyes on you, there's no running from it, no hiding, only surviving if you're lucky. The accident that almost ended my life wasn't an accident at all, though at first everyone treated it like one, because one rainy evening as I drove home from campus, my brakes failed on a downhill road, sending my car spinning wildly across the slick pavement until it slammed into a ditch, glass shattering, metal crunching, and my body thrown forward with such force that I thought my chest would collapse. But somehow I survived, barely, with a broken arm, fractured ribs, and bruises so deep they made breathing unbearable. And when the police examined the wreck, they told me the brake line had been cut clean through, not corroded, not worn, but sliced deliberately. And the only person who had access to my car that week was Vanessa, because I had left the keys in the kitchen where she could easily take them. And though I told my parents what I suspected, they shook their heads, saying I was imagining things, that Vanessa would never do something like that. But the look on her face when she visited me in the hospital told me everything. She stood at the foot of my bed, smiling sweetly for my parents, but her eyes locked on mine like knives, gleaming with satisfaction, and she mouthed the words, "You should have died," before slipping out of the room, leaving me shaking and sick with terror. And That was the moment I knew she had crossed the line, that whatever darkness she'd been feeding had now become her ally, and she would not stop until she saw me gone. But I also knew something else. I wasn't going to go down without a fight. The days after I returned home were filled with suffocating fear because the house itself seemed alive, more sinister than before, shadows stretching longer than they should, whispers curling through vents, and the reflection in my bedroom mirror would sometimes linger after I moved, as if something was standing behind me, copying me, mocking me. And at night, I would wake to the sound of scratching at my door, not from the outside, but from the inside of the wood, like something trapped inside the panels was trying to claw its way out. And I begged my parents to send Vanessa away, but they refused, saying I was paranoid that my trauma from the crash was clouding my judgment. But then my mom began to change too, not in obvious ways at first, but in subtle, unnerving ones, forgetting things she had just said, staring too long at corners of the room where nothing stood, laughing at nothing, like she was listening to a joke I couldn't hear. And one night I overheard her whispering with Vanessa in the kitchen, their voices low, rhythmic, almost chanting, and though I couldn't make out the words, I recognized the tone. It was the same tone Vanessa had used that night. I caught her surrounded by candles, and my heart dropped as I realized whatever curse she had unleashed wasn't just targeting me, it was consuming my family too. My dad grew distant, barely home, and when he seemed hollow, drained, like something had sucked the light from him, and slowly I felt like I was the only sane one left in the house, trapped in a cage with a cousin who wanted me dead and a family who was slipping away into her darkness. One night, determined to find proof of what Vanessa was doing, I crept into her room while she was out, and what I found still haunts me. Beneath her bed was a wooden box covered in black wax and carved symbols that made my skin crawl just looking at them, and inside were photographs of me, not just recent ones, but from years back, some I didn't even know existed, each defaced with red markings, eyes scratched out, faces burned. And at the bottom of the box was a small jar filled with something that looked horrifyingly familiar, strands of my hair tied with a ribbon I had lost months ago, mixed with what looked like drops of dried blood. And in that moment my stomach twisted with the realization that she'd been using pieces of me for her rituals, binding me to whatever entity she had invited, and that's why I could feel it everywhere, in my room, in my dreams, in my skin. But before I could grab the box, Vanessa appeared in the doorway, her face calm, almost smug, as she whispered, "Curiosity kills, Jenna." And then she blew across the room as if exhaling smoke, but instead of smoke, it was a sudden wave of ice-cold air that slammed into me and knocked me against the wall so hard I gasped for breath. And as I slid to the floor, dazed and trembling, she leaned down and whispered in my ear, "It's too late for you, cousin. You belong to it now," before walking away and leaving me there, broken, but with something new burning in my chest. Not just fear, but rage, a rage so sharp it felt like fire in my blood, because if she thought I was going to surrender, she was wrong. I was going to fight her, even if it meant stepping into the same darkness she had unleashed, because sometimes the only way to destroy a monster is to become just as dangerous. After the night, Vanessa caught me in her room and revealed that chilling truth, that I was bound to whatever darkness she had summoned. I realized survival wasn't enough anymore, because if I didn't find a way to fight back, I would either die or lose myself to the things she had tied to me. So I forced myself past the fear and started researching everything I could about curses, rituals, and breaking bindings, staying up late at night in the campus library, scouring old texts, hidden forums online, even reaching out to a local professor of folklore who everyone whispered was more than just an academic. And when I met him, an old man named Dr. Alden, he looked at me with weary eyes as if he already knew why I'd come, and he didn't laugh at my story. He didn't tell me I was crazy. He simply nodded and said, "If she's marked you, it won't stop until one of you is destroyed." And the way he said destroyed made my skin crawl, but it also lit a spark of determination in me, because for the first time someone believed me. Dr. Alden gave me a small leather-bound book, worn and brittle, filled with counter rituals and protection sigils, but he warned me that using them would come at a cost, that fighting fire with fire means burning part of yourself in the process. And I remember whispering, "I don't care, I just want her stopped," though deep down I wondered if I really had the strength to go through with it. But then I'd think of her smile at the hospital, the photographs with my eyes scratched out, and I knew I had no choice. The more I practiced the counter rituals, the heavier the house seemed to grow, like it could sense what I was doing. Doors slamming on their own, lights flickering violently, and sometimes I'd wake up with scratches on my arms deep enough to bleed, though no one else was in the room. And Vanessa only grew bolder, openly mocking me at family dinners, whispering things under her breath that no one else seemed to hear, like TikTok cousin time's running out, or it likes you better when you're afraid. Until one night I couldn't take it anymore and confronted her in the hallway screaming at her to stop, to leave us all alone, and she just tilted her head and smiled, her eyes glinting like black glass, and said, "You can't stop what's already chosen you," before turning and walking away as though the house itself opened for her. I knew then that waiting for her to slip up wasn't going to work. I had to trap her, to fight her on her own ground, and that's when Dr. Alden told me about a binding reversal ritual, something incredibly dangerous, something that could turn her own darkness back on her, but it had to be done at the source of her power, which I realized was that damn box beneath her bed, the one I had seen with my own eyes, the one filled with pieces of me. So I planned carefully, waiting until she left one evening for what she called a study session, but I knew was another secret ritual, and I snuck into her room with salt candles and the leather-bound book, heart pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. And I began to chant, my voice trembling, drawing the symbols on the floor with shaking hands. And as I opened the box to place it at the center of the circle, the entire room shuddered, the lights bursting above me and the photographs inside caught fire, without a match, smoke rising so thick I could barely breathe, but I forced the words out my throat raw, and just when I thought it was working, Vanessa appeared in the doorway, her face twisted with fury, screaming, "You stupid girl!" And she lunged at me, but something stopped her, an invisible barrier that the circle had created. And for the first time I saw fear flicker across her face, but it lasted only a second before she started chanting, too louder than me, her words slick and venomous, and the floor between West cracked, shadows spilling out like liquid, writhing and reaching for me, wrapping around my legs, pulling me down, and I screamed, pushing harder, repeating the counter ritual until my voice was hoarse, and the shadows recoiled for a moment, shrieking like they were alive. But Vanessa's voice grew sharper, more guttural. And suddenly she wasn't just Vanessa anymore. Her skin seemed to ripple, her eyes glowing with something inhuman, and her voice layered with another deeper one, something ancient and cruel. And I realized she wasn't just channeling the pull darkness. She was letting it live through her. She was already more monster than cousin. I thought I was going to lose, that I'd be dragged into the pit opening beneath the floor, when suddenly I remembered what Dr. Alden had told me. But the entity feeds on fear but recoils from defiance, and with the last strength I had, I stopped chanting and screamed instead, not words of the ritual, but words of rage, of defiance, telling it I wasn't afraid, that it couldn't have me, that it would never break me. And for one breathtaking moment, the shadows paused, twitching, uncertain, and I used that hesitation to slam the lid of the box shut and drive the dagger Alden had given me straight into its wooden lid, splitting it down the middle, and the effect was instant. The room erupted with a scream so loud it shattered glass. Vanessa thrown back into the wall, her body convulsing violently. The shadows recoiling into the cracks and vanishing, leaving only silence and the smell of smoke. I collapsed on the floor, gasping, trembling, covered in ash and sweat, and when I finally looked up, Vanessa was gone, not her body, not even a trace, like she'd been swallowed whole by the very thing she served. And though part of me wanted to believe it was over, that I had won, the truth was written in the walls, in the lingering chill that never left the room, in the way my reflection still sometimes moved on its own. This wasn't over, not yet, because you can't just destroy a curse, you can only shift it. And I knew deep in my bones that Vanessa's story wasn't finished, and neither was mine. The night Vanessa disappeared after the reversal ritual should have been my victory. The night I broke free from her curse, but instead it became the beginning of something much darker, because in the weeks that followed, I realized that destroying the box hadn't destroyed her, it had only unleashed what was inside, and I was left to carry the weight of it, the shadows never fully leaving me, the whispers still curling at the edges of my sleep. And every time I looked in the mirror, I swore I saw her eyes flicker back at me, like she was still there, waiting, mocking, alive inside me somehow. And though my family believed she had run away, leaving school behind in shame, I knew the truth, that Vanessa wasn't gone. She was closer than ever. I tried to return to a normal life, classes, friends, pretending to laugh at parties, but there was always that gnawing cold in my chest, that dread that someone was watching. And when I visited Dr. Alden again, hoping he would tell me I had done it, that I had broken free, he only looked at me with those same tired eyes and said, "A curse doesn't vanish, Jenna, it passes hands, and sometimes the only way to end it is to carry it to its rightful conclusion." Words that filled me with both hope and despair, because rightful conclusion meant only one thing: Vanessa wasn't finished, and neither was I. The real terror began when my dreams stopped being dreams. I'd wake up in places I hadn't gone to sleep: the library basement, the edge of the woods near campus, and once I woke in Vanessa's old room, standing over the burnt remains of that shattered box, my hands covered in ash. Though I had no memory of walking there, and I realized then she wasn't dead at all, she was tethered to me, using me as a vessel, as a doorway. And if I didn't stop her, she would walk back into this world fully wearing my skin. It became a war. Inside myself, her whispers in my head growing stronger each day, urging me to surrender, promising power if I let her, in visions of myself laughing with her eyes, her voice sliding out of my throat, and I knew time was running out, so I went back to Alden begging for another solution, and he finally admitted something he hadn't before, that the only way to sever her grip completely was to confront her in the space between the liminal void, where the living and the cursed had overlapped, a place accessed only through the final ritual in the book, one so dangerous he had never told anyone about it before. That night I prepared everything, salt circle candles, the last page of the book trembling in my hands, and when I spoke the words, the world around me seemed to dissolve, the dorm walls melting away until I stood in a gray, endless void, a place that smelled like smoke and echoed with distant cries, and she was there waiting. Vanessa, or what was left of her form, shifting between the cousin I knew and a shadow creature with jagged teeth and hollow eyes, her laughter slicing through the silence like a blade, and she said, "Finally, cousin, you came to me," as though this had been her plan all along. The fight that followed wasn't like before. It wasn't candles and circles, it was raw, primal, our wills clashing like storms, her trying to break me from the inside, her claws sinking into my memories, ripping through my happiest moments, staining them black, and me fighting back with everything I had left. Not spells this time, but defiance, screaming my truth at her, reminding her of who I was, of who she had been before the curse twisted her. And at first she only mocked me, but the more I spoke, the more her form flickered, the more cracks appeared in her shadow, and I realized the thing inside her was using her as much as it wanted to use me, feeding on her jealousy, her hatred, until she was nothing but a shell. "You can leave this, Vanessa," I shouted, my voice echoing. "You don't have to be its puppet. You don't have to drag me down with you." And for a flicker of a moment I saw her, my real cousin, her eyes wide and wet, her lips trembling like she wanted to answer, but then the shadow inside her roared, splitting her body in half like she was only paper, the monstrous entity standing before me in full, towering, faceless, its voice vibrating in my bones as it said, "She is mine. You are mine. All of you are mine." I thought I was finished, but I remembered Alden's final warning. The curse ends only when it's claimed by someone willing to bind it, and I knew then what I had to do, the unthinkable choice. I couldn't destroy it, but I could take it into myself, lock it in a prison of my own, will end Vanessa's torment by carrying it instead. So I opened myself to it, screaming, not in surrender, but in defiance, pulling its shadow into me, burning as it tried to tear me apart. And for a moment I thought it would consume me whole, but then I felt Vanessa's hand, her real hand, cold and trembling, clutch mine inside the void, and she whispered, "Thank you," before her form dissolved into light, freeing her at last. And the entity screamed as I dragged it into the cage of my own soul, sealing it with the last words of the ritual, my throat tearing until everything went black. When I woke, I was back in my dorm, the candles burned to stubs, the circle smudged, and I was alone. Vanessa gone, truly gone this time, but I wasn't the same because I could feel it inside me, still quiet, now chained, but there, and I knew that was the price. I had saved my family, ended Vanessa's curse, but I had become the vessel, the warden of the darkness, and one day it would try to break free again. And that's why I'm telling this story, not because I want pity, not because I want you to be afraid of me, but because maybe, just maybe, if I fail, if the thing inside me slips loose, someone will remember this and know how to fight it. Someone will be ready, because curses don't die, they only change hands. Thank you for listening to my story, for staying with me until the end. And if you want more terrifying true tales like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, because you never know whose story might be next.